Imagine two people walking into the same meeting. One has the better idea, the stronger evidence, and the cleaner plan. The other understands who is afraid of losing status, who needs to feel consulted, who controls the budget, who speaks to the chief executive after the meeting, and which sentence will be remembered when the spreadsheet is forgotten. The first person believes the best idea should win. The second person understands that ideas do not float through empty space. They move through human beings, and human beings carry pride, fear, loyalties, ambitions, and memories into the room. By the end of the meeting, the weaker idea may have won, and everyone may explain the result as if it were perfectly rational. That uncomfortable gap between how decisions are supposed to happen and how they often happen is the territory of the 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene's first book, developed with Just Elfers and originally published in 1990. 8 looks across courts, wars, businesses, artistic careers, and political struggles for recurring patterns of influence. It draws stories from figures as different as Louis XIV, Queen Elizabeth I, Otto von Bismarck, P.T. Barnum, and many others, while borrowing from writers such as Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, and Clausewitz. The result is not a gentle guide to servant leadership. It is deliberately theatrical, suspicious, and immoral. It describes a world in which appearances matter, gratitude fades, envy hides behind smiles, and people often compete while pretending to cooperate. The title calls these patterns laws, but that word should not fool us. They are not laws of nature like gravity, and the book is not an experimental psychology textbook. Greene builds his case through selected historical stories, parables, and reversals. Historical anecdotes can be disputed, simplified, or interpreted in other ways, and a dramatic survivor is easier to remember than a quiet counterexample. Modern social science also gives a more complicated picture. Power can make some people less restrained and more focused on rewards, but it does not turn everyone into the same person. Research suggests that moral identity changes what people do when they feel powerful. Power can amplify selfishness in one person and responsibility in another. So the real value of this book is not permission to treat every relationship as war. It is a vocabulary for noticing hidden incentives before they surprise you. We will use that vocabulary defensively and ethically. Some of Greene's laws openly recommend deception, intimidation, exploitation, or taking credit from others. Those actions can injure people, destroy trust, violate workplace rules, or cross legal boundaries. Explaining them is not endorsing them. Think of this video as a tour through a building with hidden doors. You need to know where the doors are because somebody else may use them. But knowing how a lock can be picked does not require becoming a thief. Wherever a law offers a useful observation wrapped in a ruthless instruction, we will separate the observation from the instruction and ask what a responsible person can learn. Power itself is broader than having a grand title. Social psychologists have long distinguished several sources: the ability to reward, the ability to punish, legitimate authority, expertise, information, and the respect that makes others want to follow. A junior engineer may have little formal rank, but enormous expert power because nobody else understands the system. A popular employee may have influence through relationships. A customer has power because they can leave. A worker has power when their skill is scarce, their reputation is strong, and their alternatives are real. In this sense, power is the capacity to affect what happens. Greene's central warning is that refusing to think about that capacity does not make it disappear. It merely leaves you unable to see who has it and how it is being used. There is another reason not to obey the 48 laws mechanically. They contradict one another. Court attention says one law, but use absence says another. Be unpredictable, but also protect your reputation for consistency. Conceal your plans, but work on people's hearts and minds. Concentrate on one source of strength, but avoid dependence and remain formless. These tensions are not a defect we can simply remove. They reveal the actual lesson. Strategy is judgment under conditions, not a collection of magic sentences. Every law has a context, a cost, and a possible reversal. A person who performs power techniques without understanding the people around them is not strategic. They are simply acting from a script that others can eventually read. Law 1 is never outshine the master. Greene opens with the court of Louis XIV and the fate of the finance minister Nicolas Fouquet, whose magnificent celebration at Vaux-le Vicomte became, in Greene's telling, a display so brilliant that it sharpened the king's suspicion rather than securing his favor. The practical observation is that competence can trigger insecurity when it is presented as a comparison. If a new employee corrects the manager in public, takes over every conversation, and treats the team's history as foolish, the facts may be right while the social result is disastrous. An ethical version does not require pretending to be incompetent. It means giving context, sharing credit, asking before taking the stage, and making improvement feel like collective success. The defensive lesson is to notice leaders who demand admiration at the expense of truth. Under such a leader, document your contribution, build relationships beyond one gatekeeper, and decide whether the environment deserves your talent. Law 2 says not to trust friends too much, and to learn how to work with former enemies. Greene's claim is provocative friendship can blur expectations, while a former rival may behave carefully because the relationship is explicit and they have something to prove. There is a useful distinction here between affection and reliability. Hiring your closest friend is not automatically wise if neither of you can discuss performance honestly. Working with a respectful former competitor can succeed when roles, incentives, and boundaries are clear. But the book pushes suspicion too far when it treats loyalty as weakness. Trust is not naivety, it is a prediction built from evidence. Judge people by repeated behavior, keep important agreements visible, and do not give anyone unlimited access merely because you like them. The goal is neither blind friendship nor permanent hostility. It is warm relationships combined with clear accountability. Law 3 is conceal your intentions. At its harshest, this means misleading people so they cannot resist you. In ordinary life, however, the less sinister insight is that premature disclosure can expose a fragile plan to interference, imitation, or endless commentary. You do not owe every colleague a live broadcast of an idea before it is ready. A negotiation also becomes weaker if you reveal your absolute limit before understanding the other side. Privacy can protect thought. Deception is different. If your plan depends on somebody consenting to one thing while you secretly intend another, you are not merely strategic, you are taking away informed choice. Use discretion to protect work in progress, not false promises to trap people. Defensively, compare words with incentives, ask what changes under each outcome, and avoid irreversible commitments when the other side's purpose remains strangely vague. Law 4 advises saying less than necessary. Greene sees excessive speech as leakage. The more you explain, the more chances you create to contradict yourself, reveal anxiety, or surrender information. Anyone who has watched a nervous negotiator talk through a silence can see the point. Concision can communicate confidence, and listening often reveals more than performing. Yet silence can also become intimidation, ambiguity, or a way to avoid accountability. A responsible use is simple: know the purpose of the conversation, answer the real question, then stop. Do not fill every pause to relieve your own discomfort. When you are on the receiving end, do not confuse a quiet manner with wisdom. Ask for clear commitments in writing. Mystery may create an impression of power, but a decision still needs facts. Law 5 says that reputation is a foundation of power and must be guarded. Reputation is compressed information. People cannot personally verify every promise you have ever kept, so they use your history as a shortcut. A record of calm delivery can earn room to make a mistake. A record of hidden excuses can make even the truth sound doubtful. Greene recommends attacking an opponent's reputation, but that is where observation should become restrained. Rumors and character assassination can be cruel, defamatory, and difficult to reverse. Build your own reputation through consistency, correct false claims with evidence, and separate criticism of conduct from destruction of a person. Defensively, keep records, own genuine errors quickly, and avoid public arguments that multiply an accusation. A reputation is strongest when it matches reality closely enough that other people's direct experience protects it for you. Law 6 is court attention at all costs. The modern version seems obvious in a crowded feed. An unseen product, artist, or idea cannot be chosen. Distinctive stories, clear positioning, and memorable presentation matter. Greene admires figures who understood spectacle, but the phrase at all costs is the dangerous part. Attention without trust can make you famous for the wrong reason. Constant outrage can trap a creator inside an audience that expects escalation, while a company may gain clicks and lose credibility. Seek relevant attention, not universal attention. Be easy for the right people to notice and easy for them to understand. If someone around you creates a crisis whenever focus moves away from them, recognize the pattern. Do not reward every provocation with the attention it was designed to capture. Law 7 says to get others to do the work and take the credit. This may be the book's clearest picture of exploitation. The underlying truth is that large achievements are collaborative and that coordinators gain leverage by combining other people's expertise. Delegation is not theft. A good producer, founder, or team leader creates direction, removes barriers, and makes many contributions cohere. The unethical move is erasing the contributors. It wins a short-term status prize while teaching capable people to hide ideas, withhold effort, or leave. If you lead, name the people who did the work and explain your own role accurately. If this law is being used against you, keep dated drafts, send concise progress summaries, and make your contribution visible before the final presentation. Credit should travel with responsibility. The person who claims the victory must also be present when the result fails. Law 8 recommends making other people come to you, using bait if necessary. Green's strategic point is about initiative. If an opponent can keep you reacting, they choose the terrain, pace, and questions. A salesperson who urgently summons you into their deadline has already shaped the negotiation. Regaining initiative may mean slowing down, setting your own criteria, or creating an offer attractive enough that the other side approaches voluntarily. Bait becomes unethical when it is false, hidden, or designed to cause harm. The constructive version is a genuine value proposition, make the meeting useful, the partnership credible, and the benefit clear. Defensively, be suspicious of extraordinary rewards attached to artificial urgency. Before chasing, ask who chose the timetable and what you would decide if the offer disappeared tomorrow. Law 9 is to win through actions rather than argument. Public arguments often become contests of identity. Once people feel humiliated, additional facts can make them defend the old position more fiercely. A working prototype, a small trial, or a reliable record may persuade where another speech fails. If someone says a process cannot improve, test the alternative on a safe scale and show the result. But argument itself is not the enemy. Science, law, and healthy teams depend on reasoned disagreement. The better interpretation is demonstrate where demonstration is possible and discuss without turning correction into conquest. Psychological safety matters because people must be able to report errors and challenge leaders before a small problem becomes a catastrophe. Silence may protect a powerful person's pride while destroying the organization they lead. Law 10 tells readers to avoid the unhappy and unlucky because emotional states spread. This is among the book's most troubling formulations. Misfortune is not a moral infection, and people facing depression, illness, discrimination, or bad luck do not deserve abandonment. Compassion is not strategic stupidity. The useful distinction is between someone who is suffering and someone who repeatedly refuses responsibility, manufactures chaos, and pulls helpers into the same destructive pattern. Emotions can be contagious, but so can courage, steadiness, and care. Set boundaries around abusive behavior, not around human vulnerability. Help within your capacity. Involve qualified support when needed, and do not assume you can rescue everybody alone. Defensively watch for relationships where every crisis demands your resources, but no agreement, treatment, or solution is ever allowed to work. Law 11 is to keep people dependent on you. Scarcity creates bargaining power. If a business relies on one person for a critical process, that person is difficult to ignore. Greene turns that observation into an instruction to withhold enough knowledge that others cannot function without you. This can protect a position briefly, but it also makes you the bottleneck, prevents promotion, and creates organizational risk. Ethical power comes from being valuable without making others helpless. Teach, document, and develop people while continuing to learn skills that are difficult to replace. If someone deliberately hoards passwords, contacts, or procedures, reduce the single point of failure through shared systems and succession plans. The deepest independence does not come from trapping others. It comes from having useful capabilities, trustworthy relationships, and credible alternatives. Law 12 recommends selective honesty and generosity to disarm a target. A small truth or gift can create trust far beyond what it deserves. Scammers use this principle when they return a little money, perform one favor, or reveal a harmless secret before asking for something much larger. The book accurately notices that reciprocity lowers defenses. Its instruction to exploit that response is precisely why the pattern matters defensively. Evaluate the whole relationship, not one dramatic gesture. A gift does not buy access to your money, body, data, or loyalty. If you use generosity yourself, let it be genuine and free of concealed obligation. Trust should grow through repeated alignment between claims and conduct, not because one calculated act makes you feel guilty about asking the next question. Law 13 says that when asking for help, appeal to self-interest rather than mercy or gratitude. People commonly overestimate how motivating past favors will be. A request becomes stronger when it explains why cooperation serves the other person's goals now. Instead of saying, "You owe me because I helped last year," a colleague might say, "If we share this analysis, both teams can avoid duplicate work and meet Friday's deadline." That is not manipulation when the benefit is real and the trade is transparent. It is good coordination. Mercy and gratitude still matter in human life, but they are unreliable as a complete plan. Defensively, verify that the promised mutual benefit is specific, fairly distributed, and possible. Someone who speaks constantly about what you will gain while avoiding what they gain is probably hiding the actual exchange. Law 14 is pose as a friend, work as a spy. Greene treats ordinary conversation as intelligence gathering and urges readers to discover intentions and weaknesses. In a lawful, ethical form, this becomes due diligence. Listen carefully, ask good questions, study public information, and understand a counterpart before committing. It does not justify impersonation, unlawful surveillance, stealing confidential material, or faking intimacy to expose private pain. In business, verify claims with references, contracts, and independent data. In relationships, let disclosure be reciprocal and voluntary. The defensive signal is an intimacy that accelerates strangely fast, especially when a new acquaintance asks detailed questions while revealing little that can be checked. Curiosity is healthy. Information extraction disguised as care is something else. Law 15 says crush your enemy totally. Taken literally, this is brutal and unacceptable. Greene's historical frame is war and court rivalry, where a half-defeated opponent may return. The safe modern lesson is about completing resolution. Do not leave a dangerous security breach partly open, a fraudulent account partly active, or an abusive boundary permanently negotiable. End the access, document the decision, and use proper legal or organizational channels. The object is to remove the capacity for repeated harm, not destroy a human being. In ordinary disagreement, people are not enemies, and total warfare creates the revenge it claims to prevent. A signed settlement, a revoked permission, or a clean exit is stronger than endless humiliation. Close the conflict without becoming what you feared. Law 16 is use absence to increase respect and honor. Scarcity changes perception. If you are constantly available, constantly posting, or constantly repeating the same offer, people may stop noticing. A deliberate pause can restore attention and protect concentration. The law works only after value exists. Disappearing before anyone knows your work usually creates obscurity, not fascination. In a personal relationship, withholding affection to make somebody anxious is not healthy scarcity. It is control. Use absence to make room for better work, recovery, and independent thought, not to punish. Defensively, notice when intermittent attention makes you chase approval. Inconsistent rewards can feel intensely compelling, even when the relationship itself gives very little. Law 17 advises cultivating unpredictability. Greene argues that predictable people are easier to control, while an unexpected move forces opponents to reconsider. Flexibility has value in negotiation and competition. If every response is automatic, somebody can trigger it on demand. But chronic unpredictability from a parent, partner, or manager does not create admirable power. It creates fear and destroys psychological safety. People spend energy reading moods instead of doing good work. Keep your tactics flexible while making your values and basic standards dependable. Surprise a competitor with innovation, not your team with random punishment. If another person alternates charm and threat, do not waste your life solving the mystery. Judge the pattern by its impact and create distance or formal boundaries. Law 18 warns against building a fortress because isolation is dangerous. This is one of the book's strongest observations. Power depends on information, and isolation filters information until leaders hear only what is safe to say. Networks also provide early warning, alternatives, and protection. A person with friends across departments understands a change before the official announcement. A leader who regularly hears front-line reality detects trouble before a dashboard does. Connection does not mean telling everyone everything. It means avoiding dependence on a tiny circle that benefits from controlling your view. Keep several independent sources. Speak with people below and outside your rank, and maintain relationships before you need them. The higher you rise, the more deliberately you must invite news that does not flatter you. Law 19 is know who you are dealing with. The same tactic produces different reactions in different people. Direct criticism may earn respect from one colleague and trigger defensive retaliation from another. Some people care most about status, others autonomy, certainty, fairness, or belonging. Greene frames this as choosing targets and avoiding dangerous enemies. A responsible version is calibration. Learn a person's role, incentives, history, and communication style before assuming they are a copy of you. Do not diagnose strangers from one interaction, and do not reduce cultures to stereotypes. Update your picture as evidence changes. Defensively, beware of anyone who studies your preferences only to bypass your boundaries. Understanding should improve mutual communication, not turn a person into a set of buttons. Law 20 says do not commit to anyone. Greene admires independence because the uncommitted person cannot easily be absorbed into another faction's war. There are moments when neutrality preserves leverage and prevents a false choice. Do not let two feuding colleagues force you to inherit a conflict you do not understand. Yet permanent non-commitment has a cost. Trustworthy alliances, friendships, and institutions are built through promises that constrain us. A person who never takes a stand may remain available to everyone and reliable to no one. Commit selectively, with open eyes and clear terms. Keep your judgment, but do not confuse opportunism with freedom. When someone courts every side and accepts no shared risk, assume their loyalty lasts only until the incentives change. Law 21 is play a fool to catch a fool. People enjoy feeling intelligent, and someone who constantly displays superiority can provoke resistance. Strategic humility can therefore reveal more than competitive cleverness. Ask the simple question. Let the expert explain. Do not correct every small error merely to prove you noticed it. That is different from pretending to be incompetent so you can trap a target, which is the manipulative version Greene describes. Ethical humility seeks understanding, false stupidity seeks advantage through deception. Defensively, never lower your verification standards because somebody appears naive, confused, or harmless. Sophisticated schemes often arrive in ordinary clothing. Evaluate the proposal, not the performance of the proposer. Law 22 is use surrender to transform weakness into power. When you cannot win on current terms, refusing the battle can preserve time, energy, and options. A small business facing a giant competitor may leave one market, specialize elsewhere, and return stronger. In an argument, acknowledging a valid point can remove the fuel from a person who expected resistance. Surrender here is not submission to abuse, and it should not be romanticized when safety is at risk. It is a strategic retreat from a contest whose timing or terrain is wrong. Ask what must be protected, what can be yielded, and what exit route remains. Pride often demands an immediate last stand. Judgment asks whether tomorrow's position can be improved by surviving today. Law 23 says concentrate your forces. Scattered effort creates many beginnings and few results. A company with 10 weak products may be less powerful than one that solves a painful problem exceptionally well. A creator who changes subject every week may never build the depth that earns trust. Focus lets skill, reputation, and resources reinforce one another. Greene sometimes extends this into dependence on one rich patron, which clashes with his own warnings about dependency. Concentrate effort, but do not leave your entire future at one person's mercy. Build a strong center with more than one route to customers, income, or information. Focus is deciding where your best energy goes. Fragility is allowing one gatekeeper to turn it off. Law 24 is play the perfect courtier. The courtier understands that organizations have ceremonies, egos, alliances, and unwritten rules. They can disagree without needlessly humiliating, give credit upward and sideways, and make difficult messages easier to hear. This social intelligence is real. The danger is becoming so polished that you abandon truth, flatter incompetence, and push costs onto people with less power. Political skill should help useful work travel through the institution, not replace useful work. Learn how decisions are actually made, respect people's dignity, and choose the right setting for criticism. At the same time, keep a line you will not cross. If survival requires constant dishonesty, the court is consuming the courtier. Law 25 is recreate yourself. Greene rejects the idea that the roles assigned by family, class, workplace, or reputation must be permanent. Identity has a performed element. Clothing, language, habits, and the stories we tell about our work shape what opportunities others imagine for us. Reinvention can be liberating when it brings the public self closer to a chosen direction. It becomes hollow when image is used to conceal continuing harm or fabricate qualifications. You can change careers, develop a calmer presence, or stop playing the role of the helpless one without pretending your past never happened. The defensive question is whether a person's new image is supported by changed behavior. A rebrand is fast, character is revealed over time. Law 26 says keep your hands clean. Leaders often preserve a spotless image by placing blame on assistants or using intermediaries for ugly tasks. Greene describes scapegoats and what he calls cat's paws. People used to carry danger for somebody else. This pattern is essential to recognize and wrong to imitate. Healthy authority does the opposite. It makes decision rights visible, records who approved what, and accepts responsibility proportionate to control. If a manager asks you to bypass a rule verbally, but refuses to put the instruction in writing, pause. If success belongs to them and every failure belongs to you, preserve evidence and escalate through safe channels. Clean hands created by washing blame onto the powerless are not clean. They are merely well hidden. Law 27 explores how leaders create cult-like followings by exploiting the need to believe. Vague promises, absolute certainty rituals, insider language, and escalating sacrifice can turn a group into an identity that members are afraid to question. The leader may keep predictions unclear enough to reinterpret every failure as proof. This law is most useful as a red flag detector. Be cautious when doubt is treated as betrayal, outsiders are described as universally corrupt. The leader is exempt from the rules and followers must surrender money, relationships, or independent information. Shared purpose and ceremony are not automatically sinister. Communities need meaning. The test is whether claims can be examined, leaders can be challenged, and people can leave without threats. A cause that cannot survive honest questions is asking for submission, not belief. Law 28 is interaction with boldness. Hesitation can broadcast doubt and create a half-executed plan with all the costs and none of the benefits. Once evidence supports a reversible move, decisive action often teaches more than endless preparation. Boldness also affects perception. People can coordinate around a clear direction. Yet audacity is not a substitute for competence, consent, or risk control. Some mistakes are not easily repaired, whatever a dramatic maxim says. The ethical version is prepare carefully, define the downside, then act without apologizing for the existence of your goal. Use small experiments where uncertainty is high and bold commitment where the path is understood. Courage is not the absence of caution. It is refusing to let caution become permanent paralysis. Law 20 says plan all the way to the end. Greene wants us to imagine consequences beyond the satisfying first victory. What happens after the product launches, the rival leaves, the deal closes, or the policy changes? Who maintains the system? What new incentives appear? What could make success more expensive than failure? Planning backward from an end state exposes hidden dependencies and provides a stopping point. No plan can predict everything, and pretending otherwise creates brittle confidence. Good planning includes branches, warning signals, and exit conditions. It also asks who bears the risk. A plan that looks brilliant only because another person absorbs the damage has not really seen the ending. Law 30 is make accomplishments seem effortless. Experts often produce clean performances because the struggle happened earlier, in practice, revision, and discarded drafts. Audiences value fluency, and drowning them in every difficulty can make a result feel less controlled. But hiding all labor creates false standards and can erase the resources behind success. A leader who claims effortless genius may discourage beginners and conceal an entire team's work. Present the finished product clearly while being honest about process when honesty matters. Do not confuse polish with magic. Defensively, when somebody promises extraordinary results with no visible cost, ask about training staff, capital, selection effects, and failures that were left outside the frame. Law 31 is control the options. Choice architecture is powerful because the person who defines the menu can shape the result before anyone chooses. A manager may offer two schedules that both solve the manager's problem, or a salesperson may compare an expensive plan with an absurdly expensive one, so the first feels modest. There is a legitimate version reduce complexity and present feasible options with transparent constraints. There is also coercion disguised as freedom, where every listed choice harms the chooser and reasonable alternatives are hidden. When receiving a forced menu, ask who designed it, what option is missing, and whether no decision is possible. Consent requires more than being allowed to pick between two traps. Law 30, 2 says play to people's fantasies. Facts compete with hopes. A leader who offers dignity, renewal, or belonging may inspire more movement than one who presents only a spreadsheet. Vision is not automatically deception. Human beings need an image of a future worth building. The ethical boundary is whether the story remains connected to evidence and whether inconvenient reality can be spoken. Fraudulent gurus sell transformation while making outcomes impossible to verify. Political movements can convert complex problems into a fantasy of one villain and one magical cure. Defensively, translate the dream into mechanisms, dates, costs, and tests. A vision becomes credible when it survives contact with detail. Law 33 is discover each person's thumbscrew, meaning the insecurity, desire, or weakness that can be pressed for control. The book's language is openly exploitative. Yet the observation beneath it is that influence is personal. One person fears exclusion, another failure, another loss of status. Ethical empathy uses that knowledge to communicate and protect. Manipulation uses it to bypass free choice. Never weaponize private trauma, addiction, financial desperation, or a confidence shared in trust. If someone repeatedly activates your strongest fear just before requesting compliance, slow the interaction down and involve an independent person. Self-knowledge is defensive power. The need you can name is harder for somebody else to operate in secret. Law 34 is act with royal self-respect. If you want others to treat you with respect, posture, boundaries, and expectations signal what behavior you will accept. If you apologize for every reasonable request, people may infer that your time has little value. Calmly naming your price, role, or limit can change the negotiation. But acting royal can slide into entitlement, and confidence without contribution is only theater. The useful balance is dignity without domination. Do not shrink to make a bully comfortable, and do not require others to shrink so you can feel large. Treat yourself as someone whose rights matter, and extend the same recognition to everyone else in the room. Law 35 is master the art of timing. A correct action at the wrong moment can fail. Negotiating when the other side faces no pressure, launching before the product works, or confronting someone at the peak of anger may waste a strong position. Timing requires patience and observation. What trend is forming, what deadline is real, what capacity is available, and what event would change the balance. It also requires avoiding endless waiting disguised as strategy. Define signals that mean act, delay, or leave. Greene celebrates the appearance of unhurried control, but genuine timing is not merely looking calm. It is matching action to conditions. while remembering that the perfect moment rarely announces itself. Law 36 is disdain what you cannot have and use indifference as revenge. Attention gives importance. Responding to every insult can spread it farther, while chasing an unavailable prize can surrender dignity and time. Choosing not to engage is often powerful. But contempt is not the same as acceptance. Pretending not to care can preserve the obsession underneath and prevent honest grief. The mature version is decide what deserves action, what deserves documentation, and what deserves release. Ignore bait, do not ignore abuse, safety risks, or responsibilities. If a manipulator relies on provoking public reaction, deny the performance while addressing the substance through appropriate channels. Law 37 is create compelling spectacles. Images compress ideas. A memorable demonstration, symbol, or story can make an abstract change visible to thousands of people at once. Product launches, public rituals, and social movements all use spectacle. The danger is that visual force can outrun truth. A dazzling presentation may hide a weak business, and a dramatic gesture can replace the slow work it symbolizes. Use form to clarify substance, not to distract from its absence. When watching a spectacle, ask what was selected, what was omitted, and what measurable reality exists after the lights go down. A symbol should point toward the work, not become a curtain around it. Law 38 says think as you like but behave like others. Greene warns that flaunting difference can make people feel judged and invite punishment. Social fluency does require reading the room. A new leader who insults every tradition before understanding its purpose will create resistance that has little to do with the proposed improvement. Respectful translation helps unusual ideas travel. Yet conformity can protect injustice, and many advances began when someone refused to behave as expected. The question is whether adaptation serves communication or erases conscience. Learn the local language without surrendering the truth you need to tell. Choose allies. Timing and evidence, especially when speaking up, carries risk. Blending in is a tactic, not a moral destination. Law 39 is stir up the waters to catch fish. Greene suggests provoking an opponent into anger while remaining calm, because emotional people make revealing mistakes. That is a real manipulation pattern in arguments, online harassment, and abusive relationships. Do not imitate it. Learn to recognize the hook. When a conversation suddenly becomes personal, your urgency rises and the other person keeps changing the accusation. Pause before replying. Regulate your breathing, write down the actual issue, and move the discussion to a slower medium or neutral setting. Calmness should support fair judgment, not provide cover for tormenting somebody else. A person who manufactures your reaction and then points to the reaction as proof is not resolving conflict. They are directing a scene. Law 40 says despise the free lunch. Free offers often create obligations, hidden data exchanges, or low quality dependence. Paying a fair price can preserve autonomy and signal respect for valuable work. Greene also praises generosity as a display of abundance. The practical lesson is to calculate total cost, not sticker price. A free platform may be funded by your attention or information. A favor may carry an unspoken demand, but suspicion should not make genuine gifts impossible. Communities thrive on generosity without immediate accounting. Ask whether terms are clear, whether refusal remains safe, and whether the giver keeps reminding you of the debt. A true gift does not quietly convert itself into ownership. Law 41 is avoid stepping into a great person's shoes. A successor inherits comparison with an idealized past. Copying the predecessor makes the new person look smaller, while attacking the legacy too aggressively can alienate everyone who valued it. The solution is to honor what works and establish a distinct direction. A child of a famous parent, a new chief executive, or an artist following a classic needs a problem that belongs to their own time. This law also protects against imitation in ordinary careers. Learn principles from admired people, but do not borrow their personality as a costume. Your context, capabilities, and obligations are different. Influence should become raw material, not a prison. Law 42 says strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Networks often have central nodes. One organizer, broker, or agitator may coordinate a much larger group. Removing a harmful leader's access can reduce coordinated abuse. In cybersecurity, disabling the command system may matter more than chasing every compromised device. In an organization, however, blaming one visible person can become lazy scapegoating. Culture, incentives, and replacement structures may reproduce the same conduct tomorrow. Use fair investigation, due process, and proportionate measures. Address the source of harm, but test whether the source is an individual, a system, or both. People are not sheep, and durable reform requires understanding why followers followed. Law 43 is work on the hearts and minds of others. Caution produces compliance while pressure is present. Genuine commitment lasts when people understand, feel respected, and see their interests in the outcome. This is one place where Greene's language of seduction can be translated into leadership. Listen, learn what people value, explain the reason for change, and give them meaningful participation. The boundary is consent. Emotional understanding should not become a way to conceal material harm. If a company asks employees to feel like family while cutting their security, warm words are serving cold incentives. Hearts, minds, and facts must point in the same direction. Law 40. 4 is use the mirror effect. Mirroring another person's pace, language, or concerns can create rapport because people feel understood. Reflecting a claim back can also expose inconsistency. If the rule is fair, would the leader accept it when roles are reversed? Greene includes harsher versions in which imitation mocks or destabilizes an opponent. That can escalate conflict and should not be confused with empathy. Use the mirror to check understanding and fairness, not to humiliate. Defensively, be aware that artificial similarity can manufacture trust. Shared gestures and vocabulary are not evidence of shared values. Look for what the person does when your interests diverge. Law 40. 5 says preach change but reform gradually. People build competence, identity, and security around familiar systems. Replace everything at once and even a better design may fail because training, trust, and coordination cannot update instantly. Effective change often preserves recognizable anchors, stages the transition, and produces early evidence. Yet gradualism can also become an excuse to postpone urgent justice or safety. The pace should fit the cost of delay and the capacity to adapt. Explain what will remain, what will change, why it matters, and how feedback can alter the road. People resist not only novelty, but loss imposed without voice. Law 46 warns against appearing too perfect. Perfection can create envy, distance, and disbelief. Admitting a real but bounded mistake can make a leader more credible and invite others to report problems. Modern teams learn when people can acknowledge uncertainty without humiliation. Performative flaws, however, are another manipulation, the carefully selected confession designed only to seem relatable. Credible humility includes correction, not merely disclosure. Do not hide excellence to soothe everyone, but let others see the practice, help, and failure behind it. If someone presents a life with no trade-offs, no collaborators, and no errors, you are probably looking at an edited surface. Law 47 is know when to stop after victory. Success increases confidence precisely when caution is most needed. The winning negotiator demands one more concession. The growing company enters a market it does not understand, or the person who has already made the point continues until an opponent becomes an enemy. Define success before adrenaline changes the definition. Once the legitimate objective is secured, consolidate, repair, and learn. This is the natural limit on many harsher laws. Power that cannot stop becomes appetite, and appetite eventually consumes the conditions that produce the win. Law 48 is assume formlessness. Greene ends with water difficult to grasp, responsive to terrain, and capable of changing shape without losing continuity. Fixed strategies become predictable as circumstances change. A career, company, or institution needs the ability to learn, abandon obsolete methods, and move before stability becomes a trap. Formlessness does not mean having no identity, promises, or values. If everything changes whenever advantage appears, nobody can trust you. Keep principles firm and methods adaptable. The strongest version of this law is not opportunism. It is a stable purpose combined with a flexible route. Now step back from the sequence. The 48 laws repeatedly circle 5 resources: status, information, attention, dependence, and time. Status decides whose mistake is forgiven and whose idea is heard. Information reveals incentives and prevents surprise. Attention determines what becomes socially real. Dependence controls who can walk away. Time changes the value of every move. Greene's characters gain power by accumulating these resources and lose it by surrendering them without noticing. You can use the same map without adopting the cruelty. Share status through credit, gather information through honest due diligence, earn attention with substance, reduce unhealthy dependence through skills and alternatives, and use time to think before pressure makes the decision for you. The book also teaches a powerful defensive sequence. When an interaction feels wrong, do not begin by accusing somebody of playing law number 17 or 33. Labels can create false certainty. Pause and map the concrete behavior. What exactly was promised? Who controls the options? What information is missing? What happens if you say no? Is the urgency real? Are you being isolated from independent advice? Does the other person accept accountability or only claim credit? Then slow irreversible action, document important facts, and bring in someone whose incentives differ. Manipulation grows in secrecy, speed, and dependence. It weakens when information is shared, time is restored, and exits are possible. There is a cost to seeing power everywhere. If every gift looks like bait, every friend like a future traitor, and every conversation like espionage, the book can create the hostile world it predicts. You become guarded, others feel the guard, and mutual suspicion supplies its own evidence. Research on organizational politics offers a warning. Workplaces experienced as intensely political tend to be associated with more strain, lower satisfaction, weaker commitment, and worse performance-related outcomes. A brilliant tactician may win many moments while helping build a system in which nobody offers honest information. That is not durable power. It is an expensive throne in an empty room. The contrast between Greene's court and a healthy team is psychological safety. In a fearful court, people conceal mistakes, flatter the ruler, and wait for rivals to fail. In a learning team, people can ask questions, admit uncertainty, and challenge a plan without being treated as disloyal. That openness is not softness. It is an information advantage. An aircraft crew, hospital, or engineering group that reports small errors early is more capable than one that protects the leader's image until disaster becomes public. The paradox is that a leader sometimes gains more real power by making it safe for others to oppose them. This also resolves the old claim that power simply corrupts. Power removes some constraints and magnifies the ability to act, so the person and system around it matter enormously. When morality is central to identity and accountability remains real, authority can support the common good. When leaders are insulated, rewarded only for winning, and surrounded by dependents, self-interest becomes easier to rationalize. Do not rely on personal goodness alone. Build transparent decisions, independent oversight, shared knowledge, and consequences that apply upward as well as downward. Character matters. Structure helps character survive temptation. If you want to apply the book tomorrow, begin with power over yourself. Notice the praise that makes you careless, the insult that can provoke you on command, the scarcity that makes you chase, and the fantasy that makes details feel annoying. Strengthen a skill that creates options. Repair a reputation with consistent action. Give visible credit. Ask one clear question before accepting an urgent choice. Leave one argument unfazed. These moves are less dramatic than crushing an enemy, but they produce something more valuable, the ability to participate without being easily controlled. Then decide what kind of power you actually want. Power over people is fragile because it requires constant enforcement. Power with people grows through coordination. Power to act grows through competence, resources, and freedom from coercive dependence. Power within yourself grows through emotional regulation and values that do not change with the audience. Greene's book is strongest when it helps us see domination coming. It is weakest when domination becomes the only form of influence we can imagine. If you value detailed book explanations that keep the useful ideas, examine the evidence, and confront the uncomfortable parts honestly, subscribe to Hyperlocal. It helps us keep producing long-form videos that give you the whole argument rather than a handful of fashionable quotes. The meeting from the beginning is still happening in offices, families, governments, and online communities every day. Good ideas still travel through pride, fear, loyalty, and ambition. You cannot remove the human beings from the room, and you should not want to. The answer is not to become the coldest player at the table. It is to see the table clearly, protect the freedom of everyone sitting around it, and build enough judgment that hidden power no longer has to remain hidden.